Hello, and welcome to another live stream from the rolewise podcast. My name is Mike. I'm with my two good friends, Brent and Jeff. Say hello, guys.
Hey, everybody.
Hi, everyone.
And if we're lucky, we have managed to squash all of the problematic gremlins that were causing the delay in tonight's broadcast. One of these days, we'll get fancy enough to put on one of those splash pages that tells you that we are going to be definitely live streaming, because today we apologize because we're doing this much later than we normally start. According to Brent, we have our audio engineer thumbs up, so we obviously have sound, which is great.
Seems so. At least we can hear you talking. So.
Oh, great. Can you hear yourself now?
Well, if you haven't said anything, it would be tough to judge.
Okay.
Yeah, I believe so. So I think we're fine.
Perfect. Well, I mean, that's all that really matters is me, right? I mean,
sure.
So I agree 100%.
You can have an hour-long monologue tonight. Go ahead.
with two people talking at silence,
with two mimes just hanging out next to you.
That's a really good insight that you provided, Brent. And everyone's like, "What did he say that was so amazing?"
That was about as far as my miming could go.
Yes, that was it. You don't even like pretend to pull on the rope or anything.
Yeah, I can't pull on the rope. The sides really mess me up because I don't get the angles right, so it looks like I'm.
You just, oh no, I went out into nowhere. Okay, well, needless to say, so now that we've had our sound check, and we appreciate anybody that watches this.
I just double checked and confirmed that we can hear everybody.
Oh, sweet. Perfect. We're double checked. We're like so good right now. It's perfect. All gremlins have been squashed. So if this is your first time jumping to the channel, and maybe you're a big fan of the game Astate and you kind of want to know our impressions and maybe our one-shot playthrough of it, join us, because we do typically do these live streams on Mondays, and of course we do release episodes a couple times throughout the week, typically on Mondays and Fridays. But you know what? We post them when we post them. This is kind of more of our fun hobby, so we just try to be as consistent as we can, but life does happen. So today we're going to be playing Astate. Astate is, or we're not going to be playing Astate. We're going to be discussing Astate today.
Session zero for Astate.
Yeah, kind of a session zero, a little bit, more along the lines, because it's using pre-generated characters, kind of just getting into the setting and all of those things. So Brent asked me to give a brief overview of this. So I thought I would start there. So anybody that hasn't heard the game Astate, it's a tabletop role-playing game set in a dystopian cityscape. It does come from Handiwork Games. Is that what it is? Yep, Handiwork Games. And to kind of simplify and kind of just based on what they said, the city takes place in the city, a vast, dark, urban environment where the population is crammed together by fate and circumstance. It's a place full of stragglers, gangs, chancers, and powerful factions, all vying for control. So far, good. The characters. Players create characters who are part of a circle of troublemakers. And so instead of being the heroic PCs, it seems as though we troublemakers because we're fighting the powers that be, I guess. These characters are drawn together by their shared goal to bring hope and a better future to their corner of the city. And when they say the corner, that's pretty important. We'll talk about that in a moment. There are 7 types of characters to choose from: activists, and of course I'll butcher this, but we're going to call it a Dingensmith, a ghost fighter, and of course a few others. The gameplay, since this is based on the Forged in the Dark rule set, is very much a fiction first game. And when you're reading through the books, basically they suggest that you do the fiction and try to make the rules help you have cool fiction. So it's kind of an interesting component that, it's trying to help you tell the best story you can within the framework of the rules. However, you as the players work along with your GM to protect your corner of the city, and you go do things like undertake missions, fend off rivals, and deal with various threats. And lastly, the most important component here is your corner. You actually create a corner, and the corner itself is the part of the city that you call home. It's populated with important people to you. And of course, you are defending it from all types of various threats. And so the part that we wanted to recognize is that this was strongly recommended by one of the people that that we have commenting on our videos, and so we wanted to give it a fair shake. And so we dove in with a lot of gusto over the last week. Got the rule books opened up, and Brent is the one who's going to run us through Astate. So Brent,
I'm going to give it a try. Yeah, so thank you for the subscriber who suggested this. We definitely wanted to give a look as any suggestions and games that people put in our comments. We want to try them because one of our goals is to try different games. So yeah, so thank you. So as Mike said, one of the things that is pretty important in the game of Astate is your corner. Because this is a one-shot, a pre-generated one-shot that we'll be doing. It doesn't really involve your corner as much. It, of course, names the corner, but it doesn't have any of the rules associated. So normally what you do is you build your corner as like your base of operations, and then everything in the game is about benefiting your corner. Like there's XP that you can spend on building your corner and improving it. The idea being that you're a group of troublemakers, and they're called troublemakers because they're against the state or the city, making trouble for the city and trying to make things better for their little slice of life. It's kind of interesting because it's different from Blades in the Dark, where one of the things in Blades in the Dark is you're not a good guy at all. You're a gang member and a thug. So these are more heroic characters sort of than Blades in the Dark, because they're trying to do good for the people, at least in their little slice of life. So so one of the things that we're going to do tonight is we are going to pick there are 4 troublemakers presented in this little one shot that we have. Janus, let's see, we have Janus Cryptish. Does that sound right? Cryptish, is that the name, right?
Yep,
Probably close.
Yep, who is a Lost Finder. The Lost Finders are what is the description of the Lost Finders?
Lost Finders seek
things.
what is lost or hidden. They work not so much for money as for community goodwill. They are grateful for a hot meal, a blanket, or perhaps simply a favor owed. Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah, you're all kind of homeless, other than your corner, so that's something to keep in mind. And then the second one of the pre-generated characters is the Activist, which is a battler and a community inspiration. They're more of like a face character. Would you guys say that's correct?
I think, yeah, they're kind of an interesting one because they tend to be the change public perception through like activity and all that kind of stuff. So I would say that they definitely have face components, and I was surprised by the number of playbooks that had charisma as being a main part of it. It very much felt like the number of people that were solely focused on being good in a fight was minimal,
right?
And
there's only one, really.
Yeah, and everybody else really just how they interacted with their corner in the community. It was kind of what they were. So like the Activist, they tend to be the one that gets the word out. They tend to smash, so they smash things for social change. They inspire people to action, including themselves.
Yeah, the politics of the block or the corner is a kind of a pretty big deal. So I think that makes sense within the narrative of the story. I think a lot of Forged in the Dark games, I think, really focus on it's narrative first, so fighting isn't it's very downplayed as far as fighting. Speaking of fighting, the third character we have to choose from. Going back for a second, the Activist name is Jed September, as the Activist, the one shot in the one shot. The next character is Jane Card, who is the Ghost Fighter, which the Ghost Fighter is your combat person. The Ghost Fighter is really your combat sort of character in the narrative. They're definitely the most combat focused warrior type, and really the dangerous muscle of your corner. And then the last archetype that they have presented for us, or character, is Pendleton Teacher, who is the sneak thief, who is pretty much thiefy, as they say in the name. So yeah, they're the ones that you kind of lean on to gather and survive and everything like that, as far as the archetypes presented. And I think we've already discussed which characters everybody's going to be playing. Can you guys kind of review who you're going to take up the mantle of for our one shot?
Sure. You want to go first, Jeff?
Yeah, I'm going to play Jane Card, the Ghost Fighter. We decided the characters have some benefits with people they trust, and 2 of the characters trusted each other, and the other 2 trusted each other. So we wound up choosing the ones we chose, just because those were the ones that sort of spoke to us.
Okay.
And you, Mike?
Yeah, so I'm going to go with Janus Cryptish. Since he's Meyer End's Lost Finder, he's usually waterlogged and sodden. He's most well respected and well liked in the burg. He dislikes violence, so it's really interesting that he's trusted by Jane, the most violent of the 4 characters.
Why do I have to be the most violent? I'm just the best at fighting.
The most imposing,
the most effective.
Well, because what's interesting about it, and maybe we'll talk about this in a moment, but as a warrior, you earn XP when you address a challenge with violence or intimidation. So like that's your persona, is to address it with these type of things. So why would you be the most violent? Well,
because you are the most violent.
I'm just saying there haven't been a lot of witnesses to any of my violence. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah. Whereas
actually, everybody in Meyer's End is afraid of her. So yeah, there has been witnesses.
Yeah.
Violence.
A few well-placed stories and well-placed ears is all it takes, Brent. A few bodies that come up floating in the canal.
Yeah.
So, but what's really funny is that there's rumors of a romantic attachment between him and the feared ghost fighter Jane Card. So,
there's your rumors for you.
There's rumors that swirl about. Whether or not those rumors are true, we'll have to see.
The respected man that dislikes violence is hot for the most violent person on the corner, so that's pretty interesting.
That's just what the rumors say. Obviously, we just go out and we get drinks, and I like to hear her stories because she's been more places than me, and I like to go learn about discovery and exploration.
Opposites attract, obviously.
Yeah, it must be it. Yeah. So basically that's Janus Cryptish, the Lost Finder. And as we had already mentioned for the Ghost Fighter, the Lost Finder, they gain experience when they address a challenge with exploration and discovery.
Right.
So two very different goals for that.
And again, the thing to remember about a game like this is it's the reason that the XP that's divvied out is so focused is because it is focused on those specific type of characters being within the narrative. One of the things we discussed, it's much like Monster of the Week, where these are more sort of like archetypes that you embody rather than characters that you play like a fighter. Like a ghost, you're probably the only you only pick one. Like the Ghost Fighter is the character that you are, and you're going to be the only one, and you're going to be the best at it. Same with the Lost Finder. So the place that so this particular block, our corner is what it's called. Mike said, is Meyer End, which is kind of a forlorn place. Lots of bricks and concrete tenements. Slowly disintegrating. So the idea of the troublemakers is to try and find a way to preserve and uplift the community of their corner. So the corners of Meyer's End is kind of their goal for improvement. And that's kind of the narrative. As far as, go ahead.
No, sorry.
Oh, I thought you were going to say something. As far as the game is concerned, it is Forged in the Dark, like we said before, so it is narrative focused. So a lot of the mechanics will be played out a little bit before the actual adventure. Sort of like there will be a planning stage that moves into the narrative stage where we so there will be dice rolling, and then we'll roll into the actual event, and then there will be dice rolling as kind of to see how the story follows through. I'm going to do my best to tell the story in the best way possible. Like I said, like we talked before, and I think I mentioned this on stream, Forged in the Dark and Blades in the Dark is one of those gaming systems that it doesn't always seem to fit into my brain perfectly well. So we're excited to give it a shot.
Yeah.
So
Well, and I think that for me at least, when I'm looking at it, like based on my initial read, I really like the idea of base building and having, games that have had base building. I've been seeing it a lot more is that there's a collaborative effort for the group to create something outside of the adventures and everything. I really like the castle invasion. And I like how there's a lot of games like the corner seemed really interesting because your corner has problems and troubles and upgrades that you can get. And it naturally lends itself to a certain storytelling type. So I thought that was kind of neat that to see another game take that, like this is your section of this and it's kind of like your quote unquote base building mechanic. I would be happy if every game we played going forward had that, even though we're only really playing one shots and not going to get to dive into the the mechanics of that more fully, because that's more of a campaign style play or at least long-term play.
Yeah, I really liked that mechanic in Vaesen, and I'm with you, Mike. I wish more games would incorporate something like that where you have your, for lack of a better term, bat cave that you all go back to, right? And that you can get more resources at, and you can make better and stronger and help you become better characters because you have access to more things that help you in the long.
And in a game like Blaze in the Dark or like Astate, it becomes kind of the narrative. It makes the narrative, it makes this a more sandboxy narrative more capable because you all have a combined goal. Like everybody's trying to make their the corner better. So that with that being your goal, it makes everything that, because it is kind of sandboxy. It's supposed to be like you guys decide on a job and then move out from there, where the characters decide what are we doing to help our corner. And that allows for a little bit more sandbox play too.
Well, and I think that's I think that's something that probably could be mentioned is that when you actually are talking about being the player, that they expressly call out being a player that you have 3 goals. The first goal is love your corner. And that's exactly as Brent was saying, is that the focus of the game structure, but that is key to unlocking your experience too. So in order to grow your character, that's how you want to set your attention. The second thing that they had was feel the pain. And this game is filled with pain. Embrace it. Let your troublemaker feel every betrayal, every injury, and every loss. And I think that might be a little bit tough for some people to get so emotionally attached to the story. So that could be a very I feel like that's what could be a very memorable game, is to really feel like you're really invested in all that kind of stuff. And then of course building an alliance. This game is about working together, but you have to build those relationships. So your troublemakers are strong characters, and even though you have your own interests and everything like that, like reach out. How do you build your alliances within your corner and everything like that, so that you don't immediately get taken over by the quote unquote that they were. I think one of the baddies I heard about were like the provosts or something like that. Yeah, I read a few of those.
Yeah, and that is that's specifically supported by the trust mechanic. Whereas characters trust each other more, they have more options to assist each other in certain circumstances. Even being able to share stress in stressful situations or aid them for better roles and things like that. So building the trust between your troublemakers is a pretty significant part of the game. So
yeah,
cool.
It's pretty good.
Oh, no, I like that.
In the nature of the new, I would say the new generation of games like Monster of the Week, Blades in the Dark, the powered by the Apocalypse games and Blades of the Dark's games, like character interaction and character support is very much a big part of the game. So you're part of the city. The grim dark city is your place to embrace your pain.
Well, and it's actually pretty interesting. And I think one of the things that, we I don't know if we've talked about this, but I feel like this game really requires a more active player than a passive player.
It does.
Because the story could happen to you, but I don't think that's the best way to experience Astate or some of these other powered by the Apocalypse or Forged in the Dark games.
In the Dark games, especially, yeah.
you have to make the story. So your
Mhm.
character needs to be making decision that pushes the fiction forward, and that's pretty exciting. But I think that and that's something that I was always struggling with. My D&D brain. It's kind of like my lizard brain. It's like the story happens to you, and you could actually go through a lot of D&D style games, and you could find out that as a passive player, you could kind of be led along, and it's more
Mhm.
like a theme park, right? You're like, oh, I need
Sure.
to go to the Tomb of Annihilation. Sure, there's a few steps in there, and it may seem really sprawling, but it's all still curated, right?
Yeah,
Well, yeah,
it's not a full railroad job,
Mhm.
but it's instead of the tracks
well,
being this wide, the tracks are this wide in D&D.
well, sometimes it is a full railroad job. It's just that one of the skills that you develop when you're running those types of games is making
Mhm.
people giving the illusion of choice
Yeah.
more often than anything else.
Well, yeah.
Um,
I mean, just because they
And
have
don't
to
get me
get over that
wrong, I
mountain.
still like playing D&D in those style of games.
Mhm.
It's not that, but I'm willing to call it what it is.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and this is a game where it does expect the players a lot of proactivity in
Mhm.
the creative department from the players, which is one of the things that I've always said. I think makes Blades in the Dark an intimidating game for people. It's like one of the mechanics and I haven't read as much about this, but I'm sure it's in this since it is Forged in the Dark. But like Blades in the Dark, one of the main things is if you run into a situation, is the breakout of, well, this is what I did 3 weeks
Mhm.
ago when we started this to make this work this way. I bribed the security officer to leave the
Mhm.
door unlocked so I can get by, and then you do your dice rolling and figure out if there was a trouble or if it worked or whatever. And this is
Mhm.
kind of the same way with that planning stage before you get
Well,
to
there's
Oh wow.
actually something in the play as well that you can do. I, for some reason, just left my mind, but do you have a similar thing that you can do? So, like, for example, like, let's say the example that they used in the game, where is it like, you have a loan shark knocking at your door, boom, boom, boom. Well, you can spend stress to
right.
basically have the reason, like the loan shark is going to be there, he's going to be there to at your door, but the original reason the GM had conjured was that he was there to collect the money. Well, you had just come into money, so you rewound, basically said you paid him off, but you didn't want it to seem like you had come into this money, so you still had him show up, pound on the door for the theatrics of it,
Right.
and so the outcome changed a little bit there. And I think that's something that I would have to get used to myself, is
Yeah, the
that
scene the scene doesn't change, but the justification for the scene does or whatever.
Mhm.
And the outcome
Um,
changes then too, right? Instead of you being a
well,
potentially
the
beat up bloody mess on the floor, you're
well, the outcome isn't decided. Like the GM
yeah.
doesn't decide the outcome because then you roll dice to determine if it worked or not.
Yep, it's
Okay.
called flashbacks in this
Yep.
system. I just, for some reason, I couldn't remember what that was called. I was just like, rewind time. Wasn't there something
I
called
thought I remember
tequila
reading something about
time?
Rewind. I was reading pretty quick because I mean
Yeah.
we're playing a one shot. I'm trying to get a feel for it. I'm not trying to
Yeah.
write a dissertation.
No, it was just amazing how my brain somehow like blanked on flashbacks. One of the
It
most
happens.
common.
Yeah.
But yeah, it doesn't change like the GM basically presents the problem, and then through the narrative and the dice rolls, the players kind of make out the
The solution.
resolution. Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah.
and depending on how you roll your dice, like you can succeed. Like, oh yeah, you did pay them off, but
Mhm.
there's a complication. Like they have another favor for you, or no, you didn't pay them off, depending on how you roll. Or I think the GM could
Yeah.
just say, yeah, that's fine.
Mhm.
Sort of situation.
Yeah, and I mean it sets this, there's a set stress cost with it. So there's they said 0 stress in ordinary action, which you had an easy opportunity, all the way to 2 or more stress, which is an elaborate action. And I think the example, the sneak thief has already examined the history of the property and learned of the family who once worked as the cleaning staff there, the youngest of whom, now an old lady, can be compelled to reveal the location of the hidden vault.
Right.
Oh.
And
Wow.
Snap thinking that up and like and in a moment's notice would be a thing as for a
Well,
player.
now that we know that one, when we're gonna do
We're
that,
gonna use that one a lot.
yeah,
That's
we're gonna
one
use
of
that
the-
one a lot. I'm gonna lean on that.
There's gonna be a lot of cleaning families.
Yeah, Brent, when the only thing you have in your toolbox is a hammer, everything starts to look like a nail.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, how do we get? It's an assassination job. Obviously, there's a cleaning family. Somebody's got to clean this up. So,
Yeah, exactly.
yeah, no, it's just I think it's an interesting mechanic to change the meaning behind it a little bit, but have it encoded in a way that it's not just free. Like you as the GM can't just present a situation and I go, aha, flip that around a little bit. I have to still pay a cost depending on what we determine to be.
And even if it's successful, there might be complications.
Sure.
Just like in Monster of the Week, when you narratively think of something. The difference being it becomes a weird time thing though, which is kind of interesting.
Time schmime. That's it.
Oh, are we ready to play Continuum now? Is that what you're saying?
What I'm saying is I have a mastery of the game of Continuum, so much so that you can't thwart me. I will not be running the game. I will only be playing though.
Yeah, Mike's got all the time paradoxes figured out.
No one runs that game. I believe it's synonymously the best written game that no one's ever played. I believe is what it was called in the past.
Really?
And it's so popular, it's really hard to get a hold of right now.
Popular is the word.
So I mean,
it keeps selling out, printing after printing.
No, he means it's not. He means it's not in production.
It's not.
It hasn't been in production in years, and it's hard to get a copy because there's not that many left.
And I think they go on eBay for a pretty penny. I mean, we've looked, but obviously,
I think it was $165 for the book.
Wow, for a game that you
won't play.
Nobody's playing.
No, you won't play.
That's just to put it in the collection and have it on the bookshelf.
We're kind of done with the session zero, so we can sidetrack a little bit. Continuum is a game where the time travel portion is done. I think they suggest in the book, and I heard about this game through Ludonarrative Dissidence. I've never seen a copy, but basically they described combat in the game as needing you need cards to track what you do when you go back in time to do something. So you have the event, like the attack, and then one person goes back in time to prevent something. Then the other person goes back in time to prevent something. And then you go back in time and do something else.
You have to track everyone's changes in the timeline.
Yes.
I mean, yeah, it makes, don't get me wrong. It makes sense. Okay. But that's some bookkeeping. One guy, Excel Olympic type bookkeeping.
One guy, apparently in this guy's agreement group, said you would need to have a doctorate in physics to figure this game out. Because it's a time travel game. And it tries to be consistent with that sort of mythology.
I appreciate the effort. I would be interested to see how well they pulled it off, but I'm not paying $160 for a book. I mean, for a game that I'm not ever.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, like I said, according to Ludonarrative Dissidence, it's maybe the best written game that no one's ever played.
That sounds like that's a fair assessment.
Past the playtesters.
Yeah. Well, I mean, but it's one of those things. If anybody has a copy they'd like to send to us, just reach out to Brent, and we will find a way to.
Oh, I'm not running. You're running Continuum apparently, because I'm not. I'd get a nosebleed. I said I was afraid of Blades in the Dark. Screw Continuum. Although if somebody has played Continuum,
let us know.
I would definitely like to hear about that in the comments. If somebody's played Continuum, I would definitely like to hear about that. So yeah,
that's funny. Yeah, I mean, if somebody's played it, that's great. If you haven't played it, that's probably more like everybody else. You haven't played it. So, was there anything you wanted to discuss with the rest of the characters? Because I think the only other things that, I mean, you could just go through the character sheet and
we can go through the character sheet.
Yeah, because there's basically the care, and I don't know if I don't think you'd mentioned care and what that is for the game. That's when you care, you support encouragement and medical assistance for those who aren't doing well. So who here needs your help? What can you do to ease their discomfort? And what care seems to be is like a way for you to use your various stats to help the situation.
Yeah, the stats are all fairly flexible, and like we discussed a little bit off stream, the statistics for astate are kind of loose and kind of have a lot of overlap, because one of the things that you do, it being a more free-form game, one of the things that you really do is you look at it and you say, well, how do I want to accomplish this? So a lot of times the Ghost Finder can get through a challenge that you would give to the Ghost Fighter can get through a challenge that you would give to the Lost Finder, but they will do it differently by the application of their skills. Because they'll probably use like violence, whereas the Lost Finder won't. So there's the main stats are like insight, prowess, resolve, and resolve. And then those are those are split up into hunt, study, survey, tinker. For insight, prowess is finesse, prowl, skirmish, and wreck. Wreck being one of the combats. Wreck being a skill that is like wreck items. And then resolve, which is care, command, consort, and sway. Which resolve is so obviously insight is more of like your studying skills or thinking skills, building things. Prowess is your physical ability, like all of your fight stuff is in there, as well as stealth. And then resolve is more like your charisma stat sort of thing, where care is both like emotional and body in this. Command is the ability to direct traffic, sort of. And those are really the core stats. So there's not very many core stats. And then each character has special abilities with that that allow them to reduce harm or push themselves in a fight. For example, the Ghost Fighter, who isn't supposed to be the most scary character in the game, according to Jeff, has an ability called Fearsome, where your capacity for physical violence is deeply unsettling. When you command somebody who isn't down to fight, add a bonus dice to your roll. So that allows them to command people, get a bonus for their command based on their ability to be violent. So it has a lot of abilities like that.
You mean my perceived ability to be violent?
What's really funny is that it's just really a lost kitty cat with a very angry face. There's a lot of misinterpretation going on here, Brent.
Angry face should be the name of the ability, is what you're saying?
Yeah, angry. I would say it could be something else,
accurate.
but yeah. No, I like that. But yeah, you are scary. Yeah, you're gonna be very scary.
Scary girl, scary lady.
Yeah, and of course, I think if you haven't mentioned it before, stress is the way that we prevent consequences we don't want to accept. We spend stress in order to, basically take resistance rolls and stuff like that. Did you mention anything about that yet?
I did not yet. And then when you hit a certain level of stress, I think you take a trauma.
Yeah, and then you have, of course, various traumas like. I like the trauma conditions because they're like cold. You're not moved by emotional appeals or social bonds. Haunted. You're often lost in reverie, reliving past honors. And what I liked about this particular thing is that in order to relieve stress, you have an escape, or you let your guard down or something like that. But then the escape was really interesting because it could turn into like a vice. Did you read about that? I thought that was really kind of neat.
I did a little bit.
And so like you could actually have, your ability to resolve stress, relieving it or whatever it is you could actually get yourself set up so you could take more and get more experience overall if you had a way, if your relieving stress was like doing drugs or gambling or something like that, because it puts your character in these positions that are dangerous. Whereas if your escape was like what was it, doodling or something like that, like you could still relieve stress or something like that, but it's definitely not as dangerous. You can't over doodle, whereas you can over gamble.
Right, and I believe the stress mechanic is mostly used during downtime, which you won't see a ton of. Or relieving the stress mechanic is during like the downtime, which you won't see a whole lot of, which is why I haven't read it really completely
Well,
for the one
it is a
shot.
short one shot, right? Yeah.
Yeah, for the one shot, yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, normally in campaign, that's kind of that, like I said, each, because it's a narratively driven story, each like section, each piece of the play has sort of a section where you have, basically the pre-mission, the mission, downtime after the mission, and then it kind of loops back into itself once it starts. So some of that downtime stuff won't be as key for the one shot. We may discuss it a little once we get through the one shot, just to see what would kind of happen. But yeah, it's not as essential for the one shot. So
yeah, because it's like if you have a vice, you can clear more stress. But I doubt we're going to get a vice in a one mission playthrough. Like
that would be pretty mean. That would be pretty mean, I think.
That was a lot of drugs we did there.
That was a lot of hard times we had in this adventure.
So many hard times. I gotta escape. So, yeah.
Which is common for Blades in the Dark. I believe your criminals in Blades in the Dark also have it's very, very similar to Blades in the Dark, with the setting changed quite a bit. But the block mechanic is much like the gang mechanic, or the corner mechanic is much like the gang mechanic in Blades in the Dark, where everything is about building up your gang and their haunt, something like that. Like they have a place, but the gang is the main focus. So yeah, it'll be interesting to try.
Okay. Yeah. No, there's a lot that goes into making the narrative of this, and I think that as a first time player, it seems like it's got a lot of little tiny things to remember. I think more for the GM that's going to be adjudicating the rules, you're going to have the most to remember, depending on the type of situations that come up. Whereas we're just gonna be there along for the ride, so no pressure, obviously, Brett.
You'll be able to help. Also, just so everybody really knows, the one shot that we'll be playing is called Nicely Done. So for you guys, if you see something with that on it, please don't listen to it or read it.
Okay.
I'll avoid Nicely Done.
And it will be a spoiler for those. There will be spoilers for those that are.
Are we going to pull up a character sheet and talk about it, or?
We kind of went over the main stuff. The
character sheet, I guess we did.
The character sheet is super simple. It's much like Monster of the Week sheet, where like there's just your main stats, your powers and special abilities, of which there are more than one for each character. They have two specific ones for the pre-generated character, but they each have a selection. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Looks like of about eight different special abilities that you can choose from, so you can customize your like your Ghost Fighter or your Lost Finder. Within that, they're not all necessarily going to be the same. But other than that, it's pretty similar. It's pretty simple character sheet.
Well, and the only
it's laid out. It's laid out relatively well.
Yeah, and I think the only thing that we really didn't talk about that would be more on the narrative side of things was that you first of all choose an origin and an upbringing after you've chosen your playbook. Origin being the social level that your character have, going from dispossessed and desperate all the way up to high end of middle class, professional, being part of a large company, something like that. And your upbringing is like, what is your personal experience? And usually it fits with your origin, but it may not. Includes things like academic, apprentice, business, criminal, labor, military, et cetera, et cetera. And then I think the last one narratively that you choose is you choose a faith. Now, the faith was kind of interesting because, it gives you kind of a little bit more understanding of how the city feels, but I'm not sure how much that'll play into these characters.
Yeah, I don't think they do have one. Each of them have a faith particular to them, but again, with the one shot, it isn't going to be much like Escape and everything like that. It's not going to come into play as much. We might review it a little bit more after, just to see how you would normally use it in play. But your different faiths are like, they have no faith as an option, and these are all basically faiths within the city, so they have more information. Third Church of God, the Architect, Moral God Church, Shining Sky, Millennial Group. So they're very narrative to you know, like animists are, you know, a nature religion. There's apocalypse cults and stuff like that, so it can even influence kind of the group's direction with your faith. So
well, yeah, I mean, I think I just played Fallout 3. Yeah, I played Fallout 3, which if you play just the story straight through and you don't take all the side missions, is actually a relatively short game.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah, like it, but it was, I just remember the Children of the Atom or whatever it was. You know, you have that giant bomb in the first town, and you're like, oh, if you want to know how to play an apocalypse cult, there you go.
Children of the Atom are a good one. Well, and to your point, I think Skyrim's fairly short if you just beeline through the story too. Like that's I think that's a Bethesda game philosophy.
There's really, it's really, there's just, the story is just like, you know, what was it? I mean, not to spoiler for Fallout 3, which is a jillion years old at this point, but it's like your father leaves, you leave, you chase him some more, you find him, go off, come back, find something else, and then like you're done. Like, I mean, I think it's really just, I mean, I'm shortening it up a little bit, but I mean, you could probably beat that game in 6 hours maybe.
And that's how you write an adventure, folks. Father leaves, you go after him, you follow him, you periodically go into weird towns as you're following him, and maybe you find him someday. Or more likely your group has scheduling conflicts and the game ends.
Sorry, I can't play this week.
Father
Sorry
will
for
have
the
to
last
stay.
minute cancellation. I know 8 of you are there already.
Oh gosh, you know, the father will never be found. That was a sad story.
Sad story.
Yeah.
Oh, that's what I should do on all of my games that never end. I should just write an epilogue of of what happened when everyone stopped showing up, and send it to everybody.
Wow.
I mean, it sounds something like you're going to do something really depressing, Brent.
Oh, for sure, it would be. Yes.
You know how this adventure was, the story that we were trying to tell was how you were going to save this mom and pop gas station on this old highway from a gaggle of ghouls.
I was thinking, yeah, you were secretly being shadowed by one of the king's men to see if you were suitable to, you know, assist the king with a little thing, but since you failed in that pathetic attempt, you decided to wipe out your families.
It would be more like
from history.
It would be more like time freezes and the eldritch gods of other responsibilities reaching through reality.
Okay.
Unknown armies.
That's way more you. That's way more you.
Yeah. And the scheduling conflictor strikes again.
So how are you feeling about playing next week, Mike?
I'm good. I think that, you know, like I said, I think we can give, like, I think it's pretty healthy to at least give a game a try. It may not resonate with us, or maybe our new jam, you know, but you got to give it a try. And I'm ready for it, I think.
Yeah.
Or I'll find out how unready I am and how much this is all hubris.
And that's how I will feel when I'm running the game next week.
Yeah. Brent's got all the stress. Mike and I.
If anybody wants to see the potential for failure happening, tune in next week.
Yeah. Personally, I'm excited.
Astate.
I like the setting. I like this dystopian, you know, kind of dirty, steampunky. It hits a lot of chords. I'll say that. You know?
It's interesting setting because it is very much a grim, dark setting. It reminds me of a 40K Hive world almost, with its like some of its more ridiculous, like people are soup. People get turned into soup. Levels of dystopia, but then there's things that are like not as bad, which is kind of weird.
Yeah, it feels like if it was an OSR game, like on a roll of 2, you would die of tetanus from stepping on a random piece of rusty scrap metal.
If if this was a Bork game like Morkborg or Cyborg, you would the roll to end the world would be very very low.
No, yeah, it would be, but no, I'm excited to play. The classes seem interesting. I'm
There's a
still
lot
wrapping
about
my head around some of the mechanics, but
yeah, there's a lot about the game that I think is interesting. It's just whether or not, for me, like all games, if the mechanics jive with how I feel I run games, whether I feel like they stand in the way or they
well, it's how you
don't.
ultimately as a GM though. It's how you like to tell stories,
Yeah.
right?
Mm-hmm.
How you like to run games.
Yeah.
So I think that makes sense. Sorry, I didn't mean to put words in your mouth.
Blades in the Dark is award winning and a favorite of a lot of people for a reason.
Yeah, I haven't played Blades in the Dark, so
Me neither. So this will be interesting.
we've played games using versions of the Apocalypse
World, yeah, but Forged in the Dark is its own.
It's right. I'm sorry.
Very
I'm
much its
not
own
trying to
thing.
say they're the same. I did notice some similarities.
I feel fairly comfortable with like Monster of the Week and Apocalypse World. Forged in the Dark kind of has its own little characteristics that make me wonder.
But I'm excited. I'm excited to see how I get to play my
Yeah, and it won't shy us away. I mean, obviously,
sociopathic ghost fighter.
Well, but obviously it won't turn us off from the Blades in the Dark, because we have to play Blades in the Dark at least once, and I still have it in plastic, so I gotta take that out, and maybe this will give me the idea as to what I can run for a Blades in the Dark game.
Would be cool.
It's always good to go from characters that are trying to make the world better to characters that aren't.
Are trying to make themselves better, Brent.
No, they're not. They're not, though. Really,
make their situation better.
Yeah. So ultimately, I think that that's as far as we go tonight. All right?
Yeah, it's a short one tonight, folks. Yeah. Sorry, it's partially my fault, but
it's all good.
I didn't check. Did anybody have any comments? Ask questions about Astate?
Nope, I didn't see anything. I have it open.
Okay, perfect.
Okay.
Well, if anybody has any comments, you can always just drop them in. We'll be here for another minute or so as we wrap up and all that. And of course, if you don't have any comments right now, but you want to comment on the video, you'll notice that we're very, very responsive. That's
proactive.
Very responsive.
I think we've responded to all of the comments on all of the videos. Almost all.
If we haven't, go ahead and leave another comment. We'll make sure to respond to that one.
Drive up that engagement so that we know who should comment.
Feel free to leave 4, 5, 6 comments. I'm just kidding.
Really detailed.
You could like and subscribe though. If you've watched us for this long, it would help us out. You could even click on the little bell icon on YouTube to be reminded when we have things like, say, this live stream.
Yeah,
just saying.
Saying. That'd be good.
And if you're a night owl, come join us.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So okay. Well, other than that, Jeff, do you want to tell us how they can get in touch with us outside of comments on YouTube?
Yeah, you can find us. We are at Rolewise. We are on Facebook, Threads, Twitter, and YouTube. And you also can email us, rollwiseguys@gmail.com.
And as always, thank you everybody for joining us. Sorry it's a little short and a little disjointed this time, but as always, roll well, roll wise, and be safe out there. Thank you, guys.
Thanks
Everyone.